Imagine a quiet, sunny morning disrupted by an explosion of unthinkable magnitude. On April 19, 1995, such an event shook the heart of America. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, became the epicenter of one of the deadliest domestic terror attacks in the history of the United States. Lives were abruptly changed, and the nation was left in a state of shock and grief. This violent act, known as the Oklahoma City bombing, sent ripples through the fabric of American society, forever altering our perception of safety and security. In the course of this video, we will navigate the complexities of this tragic event, explore the individuals involved, and delve into its profound and far-reaching aftermath. What unfolded on that fateful April morning was nothing short of a national tragedy, a tragedy that we continue to grapple with nearly 3 decades later. Behind this act of terror was a man named Timothy McVeigh. Born and raised in Pendleton, New York, McVeigh was a decorated Army veteran with a deep-seated resentment towards the government. A child of divorce, he had a difficult upbringing that led him to seek solace in the structure and discipline of the military. In the Army, McVeigh found a sense of belonging. He served in the Gulf War with distinction, earning several medals for his bravery. However, his time in the military also exposed him to the brutal realities of war, which would later shape his radical beliefs. After leaving the military, McVeigh's disillusionment deepened. He was particularly incensed by the government's handling of the Ruby Ridge standoff in Idaho and the Branch Davidian siege in Waco, Texas. He saw these events as clear examples of government overreach and infringement on personal liberties. Driven by a desire for revenge, McVeigh began to formulate a plan. He sought to make a statement that would reverberate through the halls of power and awaken the American people to what he saw as the government's tyranny. He chose the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City as his target, a symbol of the federal government that he so despised. The planning was meticulous. McVeigh rented a Ryder truck and packed it with a lethal mix of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, diesel fuel, and other chemicals. He parked the vehicle outside the Murrah Building, lit the fuse, and walked away. His act would lead to the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in American history, causing destruction on a scale that the nation had never seen before. McVeigh's motivations were complex. He was driven by a twisted sense of patriotism, a belief that he was standing up against an oppressive government. Yet, his actions led to the loss of 168 innocent lives, including 19 children. His intent to spark a revolution only resulted in pain, suffering, and the loss of public safety. A disgruntled Army veteran, McVeigh would become the face of domestic terrorism in America. His actions on that fateful April morning in 1995 would forever change the course of American history. The calm morning of April 19, 1995, was shattered at precisely 9:02 a.m. In the heart of Oklahoma City, a yellow Ryder truck packed with a lethal concoction of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, diesel fuel, and other chemicals exploded with a force that could only be described as catastrophic. This was no small act of vandalism. This was a calculated, deliberate assault on the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building and, by extension, the American people. The blast ripped through the structure, tearing apart the 9-story building in a deafening roar of destruction. Within moments, 1/3 of the Murrah Building collapsed into a pile of twisted metal and shattered concrete. The shockwave from the explosion didn't stop at the Murrah Building. It radiated outwards, shattering glass in 312 surrounding buildings and setting off car alarms for blocks around. In the streets, people were knocked off their feet, dazed and confused by the sudden chaos. The sky filled with a dark, ominous plume of smoke, a haunting testament to the violence that had just unfolded. Emergency services were on the scene within minutes, navigating through the rubble and debris to reach those trapped inside. The scene they encountered was one of utter devastation. Office spaces had been transformed into war zones. Desks, chairs, and filing cabinets were buried beneath the wreckage. Walls had been torn open, revealing the skeletal framework of the building. Yet amidst the destruction, there were also stories of survival. People who had been in the building during the explosion, despite their injuries, began helping others to safety. These acts of bravery, of human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy, offered a glimmer of hope in the darkest of hours. But the reality of the situation was stark. In the aftermath of the explosion, it was clear that this was one of the deadliest acts of terrorism on American soil. In an instant, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was reduced to rubble, taking with it 168 innocent lives. The Oklahoma City bombing was a moment that would forever change the nation, a reminder of the fragility of life and the destructive power of hatred. The blast left a trail of devastation with casualties running into hundreds. The Oklahoma City bombing stands as one of the deadliest domestic terror attacks in United States history, claiming the lives of 168 people. Beyond the staggering death toll, more than 500 individuals were injured, many severely. Each casualty, each injury, represents a story cut short, a life forever altered. The victims were diverse, a heartbreaking cross-section of society. They were federal employees, visitors, men, women, and tragically, children. The second floor of the Murrah building housed a daycare center, and on that fateful April morning it was filled with the laughter and innocence of young lives. When the smoke cleared, the cruel reality set in. Among the dead were 19 children, a chilling testament to the indiscriminate nature of the attack. In the wake of the bombing, the nation rallied together. Emergency services swooped onto the scene, demonstrating remarkable courage and resilience. Firefighters, police officers, paramedics, and ordinary citizens united, digging through the rubble, searching for survivors, and providing comfort to those in shock. The response was immediate and overwhelming, a testament to human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The nation watched in horror as the scale of the devastation unfolded. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, once a symbol of government service, had been reduced to a haunting shell. The images of the wreckage, broadcasted across the country, became a chilling reminder of the day's events. The grief was palpable, the shock, universal, yet the resolve of the American people was unbroken. They mourned together, healed together, and vowed to seek justice together. The Oklahoma City bombing was a wake-up call. It exposed vulnerabilities in the nation's security framework, prompting a re-evaluation of anti-terrorism policies. In the aftermath, the government took decisive action to strengthen security measures. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996 was signed into law, enhancing the federal government's powers to prevent and respond to acts of terrorism. This legislation marked a significant shift in America's approach to domestic terrorism, emphasizing prevention and preparedness. The bombing also spurred advancements in emergency management. Lessons from the Oklahoma City response shaped future disaster preparedness strategies. Local, state, and federal agencies began to coordinate their efforts more effectively, improving their ability to respond to crises. The tragedy served as a catalyst for change, transforming the nation's emergency response system. The Oklahoma City bombing was a dark chapter in American history, yet from the ashes of tragedy, the nation emerged stronger, more united, and more prepared. It served as a harsh reminder of the dangers of extremism, but also of the enduring strength of the American spirit. The attack changed the nation, but it didn't defeat it. Instead, it fortified the resolve to protect and preserve freedom and democracy. The Oklahoma City bombing would forever reshape America's approach to security and counterterrorism. The hunt for the culprits was one of the most intensive investigations in American history. The trail of evidence was intricate and vast, leading investigators across the nation. Timothy McVeigh, the mastermind behind the attack, was stopped by a state trooper just 90 minutes after the bombing for a traffic violation. The trooper, noting McVeigh's suspicious behavior, arrested him. Meanwhile, the wreckage of the Alfred P. Murrah building held critical clues. Among the rubble, investigators found remnants of the yellow Ryder truck used to carry the bomb. A vehicle identification number on a twisted piece of metal led them to a rental agency in Junction City, Kansas. There, employees remembered renting the truck to a man resembling McVeigh. Hotel records, phone calls, and a sketch based on eyewitness descriptions further tied McVeigh to the crime. But McVeigh did not act alone. Terry Nichols, a friend and fellow anti-government extremist, was implicated as an accomplice. Evidence suggested that Nichols assisted in gathering and assembling the materials for the bomb. He was arrested at his home in Harrington, Kansas, just 2 days after McVeigh. The trial that followed was a spectacle, as the nation watched with bated breath. Prosecutors presented an overwhelming amount of evidence against McVeigh, including his fingerprints on items used to construct the bomb, a receipt for a ton of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, and a letter written by McVeigh expressing his intent to wage war against the government. McVeigh's defense team argued that others were involved and that McVeigh was a scapegoat. However, the jury was not swayed. After a grueling trial that lasted more than a month, the jury returned with their verdict. McVeigh was found guilty on 11 federal counts, including conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction. The man responsible for the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in American history was sentenced to death. McVeigh was sentenced to death, a fate he met on June 11, 2001. After his conviction, McVeigh was transported to the federal death row at Terre Haute, Indiana. While on death row, he lived a life of solitude, spending most of his time in his cell, reflecting on his actions. His days were marked by the ticking clock, counting down the minutes to his inevitable end. The day of his execution was solemn, with a heavy atmosphere that reflected the gravity of his crimes. McVeigh remained stoic, showing little emotion as he faced his impending demise. He was administered a lethal injection, a method deemed as the most humane form of capital punishment. As the life ebbed out of him, the world watched, hoping for closure. McVeigh's execution marked the end of a dark chapter in American history. Yet, it was a chapter that would remain indelibly etched in the minds of those who lived through it, a stark reminder of the cost of hatred and extremism. The echoes of the blast continue to reverberate in the lives of those who survived. The aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing was not confined to physical damage. The psychological, emotional, and social toll on survivors and families of the victims has been profound and enduring. Many found strength in the face of adversity, channeling their grief into actions that honor their lost loved ones. They turned sorrow into strength, tragedy into resilience. In the wake of the devastation, memorials and foundations sprang up as beacons of hope and remembrance. The Oklahoma City National Memorial, with its symbolic field of empty chairs, stands as a solemn tribute to those who lost their lives. Foundations like the Oklahoma City Community Foundation were established to support survivors and families, offering resources and assistance. The Oklahoma City bombing, though a painful memory, also stands as a testament to human resilience and unity. The Oklahoma City bombing remains one of the most significant events in American history. It shook the nation to its core and forever changed the way we view and address terrorism. The bombing was not only an attack on a federal building, but an attack on our collective sense of safety and security. In the aftermath, the United States strengthened its counter-terrorism measures, refining its strategies and policies. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that terrorism can strike close to home, leading to the creation of more robust systems to prevent such events in the future. The bombing's legacy also lies in the resilience of the survivors, the families, and the Oklahoma City community. Their stories of strength, recovery, and unity continue to inspire, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of hope. As we remember this tragic event, let us also remember the strength and unity it inspired. And remember, for more content like this, be sure to share, subscribe, and join us next time. Thank you for watching.